Why does lighting not always get the attention it deserves in conversations about surgical innovation? Welcome to Beyond the Light, where we talk about the people, ideas, and innovations shaping the future of medical lighting and medical technology. I'm your host, Lindsay. Today, I have two special guests with me to discuss how the commercial side meets the engineering side when it comes to surgical lighting. I'd like to welcome Riham and Dylan. She is the surgical project engineer here at Lumitex, as well as Dylan Ash. He's the senior product manager for surgical. Hello to you both. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having us.
So to start, can each of you share a little bit about your role and how you interact with surgical device customers? Riham, I'll start with you.
Sure. So I'm the project engineer here at Lumitex, closely with our OEMs that are developing new surgical systems. And my role is really trying to translate what they're trying to achieve into a lighting solution that actually fits into their device design. So I spent a lot of time really understanding the procedure, the design of the retractor, and then working through how lighting can fit into that system and perform well in the surgical environment.
And I'll go
Dylan?
next here, Lindsay. So I'm the senior product manager for Lumitex's surgical portfolio, as you mentioned, and I act as our primary point of contact for our customers. So in my role, I'm acting kind of as the liaison between customers and Lumitex, leveraging their insights and developing in-cavity lighting solutions that meet their needs and provide long-term value. And all that's done through the close cross-functional collaboration that we have internally here at Lumitex.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. And Dylan, from your perspective on the product and market side, why does lighting not always get the attention it deserves in conversations about surgical innovation?
Yeah, great question. I would say from my perspective, lighting doesn't always get the attention it deserves in surgical innovation discussions because the industry typically defaults to existing readily available solutions like overhead OR lights or head-mounted surgeon lights. And while these provide great disperse illumination, a common misconception is that they're sufficient for all applications and procedures, particularly that involve deep cavity access or tunneled access. Proper illumination and visibility are critical, yet these traditional solutions often can't achieve this adequately.
Yeah, absolutely. Riham, I know you're out in the field quite a bit. So when you think about the operating room, what is it that surgeons are really asking for when it comes to visibility?
That's a good question, Lindsay. I think when it comes to visibility in the ORs, surgeons are really asking for consistent illumination, especially where they're operating deep inside a surgical cavity. They really want light that gives them clear visibility without creating the glare or shadows sometimes you see and without generating heat that could become an issue or risk to the patient. And just as importantly, they want a solution that integrates naturally into their workflow without adding that extra step or added complexity to the procedure.
Yeah, it's very interesting. One thing that I think is kind of fascinating about having both of you here is that you look at new opportunities from very different angles. So when a new opportunity comes in to Lumitex, how do each of you look at it differently? Dylan, I'll start with you.
Yeah, great question. From a product management and sales perspective, I typically evaluate new opportunities in terms of overall fit. So specifically, I assess whether the customer's needs or their intended application can be addressed using one of our core lighting technologies, or if it would require net new development on our side. Historically, our business has been primarily focused in spine. So when I'm looking at new business opportunities, I think long-term about how we can expand our reach and apply our existing knowledge and expertise to improve surgical lighting and other specialties as well outside of spine.
Riham?
Yeah, so really what Dylan said. So after we do that assessment from a product management standpoint, I look at it from an engineering perspective is that I start by understanding the procedure and the type of the system that the customer is developing, especially the retractor being used. That helps us understand where the visibility challenge might be. And then the next step is really looking at the geometry of the device I'm going to be dealing with, translating the customer needs into design parameters, things like brightness, how much bright, and the light distribution, and how light can overall fit into the retractor system smoothly.
And I think just to kind of think about the whole picture, Riham, could you kind of walk us through what typically happens when we have that first conversation to a customer all the way up until the point that we have an actual functional prototype?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, after we have assessed the design and the opportunity, we really work closely with our customers. Sometimes we get into brainstorming sessions, do multiple phone calls, and try to get samples in-house to really get our hands on them. so that we can design the best lighting approach for the system. And then communication is key here with the customer to really align on design concepts and everything early on before we actually go to development.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And, along these lines and in this vein, I think it makes sense to focus on why custom lighting is so important. Riham, just staying with you for a minute from an engineering standpoint, what would you say are the hidden challenges of integrating lighting into a surgical device?
Great question. So a lot of people think that lighting is really pretty straightforward, but integrating it into a surgical device comes with quite a few challenges. Space is usually the first one. Many surgical retractors have really compact channels for where the lighting fits, so that can sometimes be a little bit tricky. And then there's delivering the bright illumination. While brightness really matters, it's really more about directing the light properly and avoiding shadows into the deep surgical site. We also have to think about heat and keep it in mind. And in some instances, obviously, we need to make sure that the system can withstand multiple repeated sterilization cycles. So overall, from an engineering standpoint, it really becomes a good balance between performance, durability, and the constraints of the device we're working with.
Yeah, absolutely. Dylan, this is really something I think is close to you, and I know that you've experienced this time and time again. Can you talk about how lighting can become such a big differentiator for an OEM?
Absolutely. I think from a product perspective, lighting can be a differentiator for an OEM when it's tailored to the needs of the surgeons and the clinicians that are actually going to be using the products. And that's ultimately dependent on the specific procedures that they're being used in. When lighting is integrated thoughtfully, it enhances the device by providing illumination and enhanced visibility, which can elevate the clinical functionality and performance. In procedures where accurate tissue identification and precision are critical, better lighting can ultimately support improved outcomes.
Absolutely. So, this is something I talk about often in these Beyond the Light episodes. So, I need to get your take on it. At what point in device development should companies be thinking about lighting?
I'm really glad you asked this question, Lindsay. I cannot emphasize how important it is for lighting to be considered early on to achieve the best outcome. Ideally, lighting should be considered early in the design phase before the device is actually finalized. That gives us engineers the flexibility to properly work and integrate the lighting into the device geometry and have more options really when it comes to the design, material selection, and just overall the best fitting approach. If it's introduced too late, the device at that point is usually locked and you can't really change it a whole lot. So it becomes a little bit of challenging trying to fit lighting into a system that wasn't originally designed for.
Yeah, I would say
That makes sense. Anything to add, Dylan?
echoing off
Yeah.
what Reham said, I think really the earlier the better in terms of lighting being considered as part of the device design. As soon as the concept's been developed from a design perspective, lighting should also be considered. This ensures that lighting remains at the core part of the device design and it's incorporated properly so it functions in a way that provides the best possible outcomes in the procedure that it's going to be used in.
Absolutely. As we kind of look forward, procedures continue to become more minimally invasive, more precise. Rehab, how is that changing what lighting needs to do?
I think one of the big changes with MIS is that surgeons are really working through smaller access points and often much deeper into the body. So because of that, the typical overhead lights in ORs don't always reach where the surgeon actually needs the light. So I believe lighting needs to become more targeted. It's less about just increasing brightness, but it's really more about directing the light exactly where it needs to be and controlling the beam so it provides consistent visibility in those deep surgical cavities at sites.
Yeah. And Dylan, looking ahead a bit, where do you see surgical lighting evolving over the next several years?
That's the $1 million question, Lindsay. I see surgical lighting continuing to evolve towards more versatile handheld solutions that can be used across a wider range of procedures. Now, this would include a movement towards more portable battery powered systems that reduce the reliance on capital equipment and would provide some greater flexibility in the OR for the end users that are using the products.
That makes sense. So, to kind of wrap this up, I want to ask you both, what is one misconception about surgical lighting that you would love to correct?
Dylan, I think one misconception is that surgical lighting is just about brightness. Or it's just a simple add-on device that you can add on at the end after you develop your device. So while brightness definitely matters, it's really important and it's really only part of that equation. Lighting really needs to be thoughtfully integrated into the device design. Things like placement, beam control as discussed, and how the light is delivered all play a big role in how effective it is actually in the surgical field, I think. What do you think, Dylan?
I think Riham stole the words out of my mouth a little bit, but I would say my key message would be that, surgical lighting, the brightness doesn't always determine the effectiveness. Proper lighting placement is paramount in ensuring that light reaches critical structures that are otherwise difficult to see, especially in those deep tunnel procedures, while ensuring that you're minimizing the shadows to improve visualization in the surgical field to ensure that we have best outcomes.
Really great insights from both of you. Dylan, Riham, thank you both for taking the time to share your perspectives today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay.
And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow Beyond the Light for more conversations with the people shaping the future of medical lighting and medical technology. And until next time, keep pushing boundaries and keep improving life with light.